Hi everybody, Giselle Grenier here from artplace.ca. In today's Book of Backgrounds video, I'm going to be doing a technique versus another technique, and I'm going to be using this particular background, okay? And I'm going to be splitting this into two videos because it would be too long. So I'm going to work on one experiment on this side, then one experiment on this side. And I received an email from somebody challenging me to use craft paint. So I'm going to be using some craft paint for this one, and I'm using the DecoArt Americana acrylic paints, very high quality acrylic paints with a matte finish, pink chiffon, chartreuse yellow, mustard seed, and sea glass. Now my biggest challenge for this is that I am so used to working with transparent colors, plus on the Traditions and on the DecoArt Media Fluid acrylics, the pigment numbers are written on the back of the bottle, so I know exactly which type of blue or which type of red or which type of yellow is in there. With craft paint, that's not the case. So I'm going to be using my eyes to see. In the experiment we're going to be running is going to be stencil versus mask. And I'm using this, it's called a stick-on stencil. Beautiful stencil. So this is what you have here. So you've got the stencil, but then the pieces that are inside are also removable to create a mask, and this is really cool. I don't know why all stencil manufacturers, why they don't do this, because I think it's a fantastic idea, is to actually allow the masks to be available, and DecoArt has done that. Even with some of the Andy Skinner stencils, they have stencils and masks in one package. Now it looks a lot prettier in the package once you've opened it for the first time, but I will show you this one. So this is the one we're going to be working with, or maybe we'll work with the big one. So this particular stencil, okay, that's the big one here. Okay, that's this big one here. So if you remove the stencil, and there's the mask, so you can use the stencil and you can use the actual mask, and I think we may actually use this one because they're much bigger. So we get to use both. So one experiment will be using the stencil only, and then the other experiment will be using the mask only. I may alternate a color or so because the sea glass, for what I want to try, I think the sea glass is going to be too opaque, but it's an experiment. So we'll leave it at that. Move that out of the way. All right, so I'm going to gesso this page, and if you've been following me, you already know why I'm going to do the gesso. Is to prime the page so the paint sits on the gesso, it grabs it, and doesn't just soak into the paper, which takes forever to dry. A couple of methods of applying gesso. My favorite is using a number 8 bristle brush, and I just scrub the paint. This way you can use it as thick or as thinly as you want, and depending on the technique, the brush strokes will actually be picked up in with the paint. Okay, so there's that method. The other method is to use palette knives. Okay, doesn't matter which one you use. Pick up the paint and scrape it on. Now my palette knife is getting close to having to, I don't know, it's got some oxidization on it. I think something spilled on it. Okay, well, this is more like think of it like frosting, roughly frosting a cake. You can get really experimental with the gesso on this. You can, with the shapes and all that stuff. The other way, you apply a lot of gesso, and you use a texture tool. And these texture tools are in kits with the palette knives, and all you do is you scrape the gesso, which applies a very, very thin layer, which is ideal for drying, but it covers the area much faster. And I'm using the flat side. Does it matter if I get gesso on that side? No. If you're working on a two-sided spread like I am, and if it's critical that you don't get gesso on the other side, just put masking tape on the edges. I'm not worried about it. These are just backgrounds. Okay, so there's those two ways of, or three ways I should say, and I'm pretty sure there's other ways as well, using old credit cards and driver's licenses and all that stuff you can use. I like the texture tools because they're much more flexible, and where you're working on something quite delicate, so let's say you want to work on something like that which has a lot of tissue, you're not going to tear it. So let's see, if I look here, you see some areas where the gesso is like micro thin. And down here, I didn't gesso all the way to the end because we'll see what that does for the actual texture of the paint in the stencil. So I'm going to clean all these, and I'm going to let this dry. And when we come back, we'll start applying our layers of color. What I didn't show you, and it's a habit I have got to stop doing this, when I create a page or a canvas or a wood panel where I'm using gesso for some texture, when the gesso has almost dried, and this is only for a piece where the actual piece I'm working on doesn't require heavy duty sealing. So let's pretend I was working, let's say, on a metal can, and I'm just going to use this example, and I would put gesso on it. I would let that dry, then put more gesso, then do what I'm just going to explain to you. What I did is I applied the gesso like you saw. Then when it was almost dry, I took a cloth and I started wiping everything back. And what that does, that created some really interesting shapes and some textures. And I also went inside the crease, so you can see some really interesting. And what this does, when you work with the palette knife, you have those hard edges. It just softens things a little bit. And with the hard edges, it just makes stenciling a little bit more difficult. Although this is a stick-on stencil, makes it easier. But so anytime I'm going to be doing some stenciling, I usually just rub this back. The reason why I say using the metal can as an example, when you do this, you do end up removing some of the gesso. So working on paper is fine. If you're working on something that actually needs to be properly sealed or properly gessoed, let's say you're working on raw canvas and you're doing a oil painting, you need to put gesso on everything, let it dry for the proper amount of time, then you can put the gesso on again with a palette knife and then soften it out if need be. The oil paint was a better example. Okay, pink chiffon. So I'm going to be working only on one side. Where's my wax paper? On the floor. Let's get a different sheet. On the floor, on the floor, on the floor. We are getting so close to the end of Book of Backgrounds. Let's see. There we go. And the gesso is cracking a little bit. The paper was actually cracked. What I should have done was I should have scored it first, then fold it, but doesn't matter. Pink chiffon. So I'm going to dot this on. We're going to start building our base now. And I'm applying very little. And I'm taking a dry 1-inch wash brush. And I'm just softening everything out. So it's obviously some type of pink with white in it. And I'm looking, it's more on the blue side. Because colors on the color wheel only go one way. Red is either more blue or more purple or more orange. Blue is either more violet or more red or more green. So there's only one way. They can either go one way or the other for actual color temperature. This looks like, this definitely does not have orange in it. All right, so I'm going to go back and forth with these. Now I'm going to take chartreuse yellow, and I'm thinking I probably should have put a bit more chiffon on that. We'll see. And because I'm not sure if I'm going to go back, I don't want to contaminate that brush. I'm going to go to another brush. There's a little 3/4. Oh, this is pretty. Soften those edges out. This looks very similar to, well, it's a bit more yellow, but green gold. Now I am finding that where the gesso is really, really thin, it's just sucking right into the paper, not allowing me to do an awful lot of blending. I could use water in my brush. I don't want to use water. I want to apply this completely dry. Creating a very interesting background. Okay. You don't want to overlap everything. Let some of that pink show through. I think I'm going to put some more pink in there. Let me dry this first. This doesn't take long to dry at all. No, I'm not going to leave that. I'm going to leave that open. That is really pretty. I'm going to take my kitchen cloth. Let's see if we can rub this out a little bit. I cut these cloths way too small. So this distresses quite nicely as well. And when you do this, when you're intentional on wiping back paint, once it becomes tacky, it does come up. Oh, let's get some DNA in there. It does come up and it leaves a really, really nice texture to it. Okie dokie smoky. I'm gonna put those brushes in my water. And I use the big stencil. And you don't need to cover everything. So I'm going to, let's say, work this side here. And, okay, let's do some mustard seed. Let me just cap my gesso. And that's some sea glass. These three here are new colors I've never used before. Well, I have used them like in the last couple of weeks, but never. This is a new line, new colors. Really, really pretty. Okay, well, let's try with mustard seed and see what happens. I'm gonna go over the areas for contrast. I love it. I like it when stencils overlap. Okay, now let's, oh, another brush. That was a little big, but now sea glass. This is really opaque. Holy smokes. This is really, really, really opaque. It's interesting. That's too much paint for me for the effect that I want. So, baby wipe over the whole thing. Whoopsie. And I'm going to touch on that. Let a little bit of water get in there. If this was something that I did which was totally foobarred, I can work around it or just put some rubbing alcohol on there. There. Ah, paper towel. There we go. It's press and lift. You do get some smudging, but that's fine. I don't mind the smudging. Like that. Okay, so, whoopsie. I want some stencils going off the paper. I'm liking the sea glass quite a bit. So the sea glass, for contrast, wherever there's some yellow, I'll apply a little bit of that. Keep it very, very thin. That'll be some nice contrast. The mustard seed I'm going to apply even thinner, using a very, very light touch, and primarily where there isn't any paint, but I can kind of move that around. A little bit of mustard seed, sea glass I should say. Well, mixing the colors is actually pretty. Yeah, it creates a different type of yellow green. Okay, so because it's opaque, I have to be very, very light on the touch with sea glass. Like super light. Look how light that is. Wow. Super light. Let me apply a little bit more in here. So now I'm just moving it. These stencils are really, really neat. A bit more sea glass. I'm just breaking up all that yellow. Yeah, so let's get a path going here. And I'm going to be just picking areas to apply the stencil on. Very rough. Now, I don't know what you guys see in the monitor, if it looks really, this looks really, really dark green, and it's not. It's not dark at all. So with the experiment stencil versus mask, I already know that what stencils will do. On camera, this is my first time using this line of stencils. And I like working with these. I like working with those. A little bit of transparency there. Ah! Okay. Let's just get a little bit more. So basically that's this part of the experiment, is just working with the stencils and just overlapping the colors. And what I'm trying to see is how far I can take these stencils before I lose the stickiness, and it doesn't look like I will. It doesn't look like I am going to lose the stickiness at all. And cleaning. Wash with soap, gently wash with soap and water and pat to dry. So you don't need any special treatment on it. Which is always nice, because I don't know about you, but I hate cleaning stencils. I don't care what super duper technique is out there, I just hate cleaning stencils. I do find though that stencils that are important to me for crisp edges, that I'm going to change this one here. I end up sometimes having to use rubbing alcohol, where the cleaners, the traditional stuff that I use to clean it doesn't work. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so I can use it. Yeah, it is a little bit more opaque, so as long as I use it quite thinly, it's fine. So now that I have that on there, if I wanted to kind of blend things out a little bit, let's go back to the pink chiffon. This is super, 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 super light. I can come in with my little bristle brush. I would typically use the number 8 bristle bright for this, but it's too big. And I can come in and I can overlap some of the areas of this yellow to create pockets of softer edges. And this is only, I'm doing this only because I know that I'm going to be creating some other type of art on here, and I do want areas for focal point. Now, in saying with what I'm doing, you don't need to do this because this is just a background. You can always do this stage when it comes time to doing the art. So the pink chiffon is really nice to soften some of the areas. I don't know if it's what you see, but what I see, this green is quite bright for me. So I'm just knocking that back a little bit. Knocking it back just a little bit. But mind you, I think if I had the green everywhere, I would actually like it. There we go. Okay, so love the stencils. So the experiment actually worked quite well. Love the stencils. Come on. So love these stencils. They stick on quite well. But you know what I want to do? Okay, so I'm going to cheat. I gotta do this. I'm going to add a transparent layer of green gold. I'm sorry. I gotta. Just clean this up. Shake. I know I'm going to need more than that. And going to get not a baby wipe, a paper towel. Oh yeah, like that. And add a little water to that. And no, I'm going to get a baby wipe and squeeze the baby wipe in the paper towel. I'm trying to see what I can get with the distressed look with a stain everywhere. Oh, yeah. Here we go. There we go. I love the visual texture that you can get with paint. And the areas that have the pink chiffon, it's a little bit darker. A little bit darker. Because you know what happens when you mix red and green together? People say, you get mud. Well, yeah, but you get a chromatic black. Anytime you mix opposites together, it's some type of chromatic black. It's just a brownish version of the mixed together. For me, the huge challenge is actually working with black, the color black, pure black, carbon black, out of the tube, out of the bottle. Like I always make up my own blacks. Transparent black, usually with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. An opaque black, you could use raw umber. And most blues are all, the darker blues are all transparent anyways. Oh, I like that. I like that. All right, I'm cleaning this up because I don't want to smudge that. Let me dry this for a sec. What would happen now? So if we go and do another third, not everywhere, but a third layer of just a sea glass. To make some spots pop. Okay, this stencil is great for this technique, where you want to remove some of the areas of paint. And again, I'm going over areas that don't have any of the stencil already. Oh, that one I think did. Yeah. Okay, so this one here, way too much paint. So I can come in with a damp paper towel and remove a little bit of that paint. And oh, now we have some good texture in there. Wow. And let's put another one here. What if you, what happened with modeling paste with this stuff? Modeling paste. Should I try it? That's a silly question. I'll try anything. I'll try anything. Let me just darken this one here. I'm just overlapping it again. Let's try some modeling paste through these. And that I've never done before with these stencils. I've never used modeling paste. Is that a clean brush? Yeah, it's a clean brush. Or is that dirty? I don't know. Let's see what happens. It's micro thin. Oh, okay. That's all right. That's all right. Oh, press the stencil on first, silly girl. Okay, this is where the challenge is. It's sticking to the unstick. Okay, for modeling paste, these stencils are really, really nice. And let's just do a little bit. Let's just do this one here like this. And I went to a clean side of the stencil. Is it sticking? Yeah, it's actually not bad. It's losing a little bit of a stickiness because there's paint underneath. Yeah, it's losing a little bit of its stickiness. How I can get around that? Just clean this, wash the stencil. Easy peasy, just wash the stencil. But even some areas, come on, there we go. Let me just clean up a little bit of those edges. Okay, I'm going to take this out now. I'm just going to clean up a little bit. Well, mind you, what, these edges here don't really matter. It's just going to add, to the background, but I'm here. Let's go do it. And this one here, that one there. Off the edge there. Okay, so that's it. I'm not going to be painting. I'm not going to be painting this modeling paste. I'm going to leave it the way it is. But yeah, so through that stencil, depending on the pressure you use, you get a very, very thick application or very, very thin application. I like the thin. I'm liking the thin much better. There's a chaos hair right here. Oh. So not only my DNA for my fingerprint, I've got a kitty cat hair. All right, you guys, that's it. I'm leaving this the way it is. So with this experiment, we used the Americana stick-on stencil. This is called Quatrefoil, and love it. So I really, really like that. Love the way it sticks to the paper. Paper is probably the worst thing for stick-on stencils, because you know they're really good for glass and tin and stuff. So I really like that. Love the way the Americana acrylic paints layered on there. Loved how they were able to be wiped back. Color choices for me, this is a little bit outside of my comfort zone because it's so bright. So this experiment actually went really, really well. So now I'm going to clean up the area and I'm going to work on the next experiment, which will be the similar colors, but we're going to be using the masks instead, which are these parts. All right, so love to see your version of using the paint that you have in stencils to create different layers and stuff like that. If you don't have it in the Americana paint, use the cheapest paint you've got, the cheapest children's paint. Use children's paint to see what you can create with the artwork. And I would love it if you would share a picture with me. You can either email it to me or share it in our private Facebook group, which is a free group made up of artists of all levels. Links to both of those can be found on my website at artplace.ca. So off to do the other experiment, and until I see you in that video, stay inspired.